of screen education. And he's taking the story of film, of media studies from the 1930s through the BFI, up through SEF, through screen, through the kind of splits with screen, and just really tracing. I mean, it's almost a kind of personal history, but it is kind of fascinating. I mean, I think for people who are interested in media education, it's a must read. So his subtitle is From Film Appreciation to Media Studies. And I mean, I'm only halfway through it, and he's really just getting to the point at which media studies begins to take over from film appreciation. I mean, some of the people in this room will remember the arguments we used to have with the Scottish Film Council about what we meant by media studies. And we didn't mean film appreciation. We meant understanding the semiotics of cinema. You know, we meant hardline understanding. So we were very much arguing against media studies, screen education, whatever, as a discipline, you know, as being like literature, not just about appreciation for the kids that weren't going to get very good hires. So the kind of the position that we occupied in the 70s and 80s was very much on the media studies side of that dialectic. I mean, I think the question I want to ask now is it from film appreciation to media studies and back again? Because I mean, I think there is some unfinished business with film appreciation. I think we do have to think about how kids now don't just understand cinema, but how they can come to love cinema. Yeah? How they can come to love cinema. I always struggle with the concept of loving television, but I'm led to believe that there are people who do love television. But I mean, lots of us love cinema, and it's how you get that, as well as understanding how bad the representations of Scotland are, how you get that kind of sense of loving cinema back into it. And there's a kind of tension between knowingness and enthusiasm, which the American philosopher Richard Rorty talks about. He says, when I attribute inspirational value to works of literature, I mean these works make people think there is more to life than they ever imagined. And he says, of course, if connoisseurs of charisma, by which he means the people who are simply inspirational, the connoisseurs of charisma were the only sort of teacher available, students would be shortchanged. But they will also be shortchanged if the only sort of teacher available is the knowing, debunking, nil admirari kind. The natural tendency of professionalization and academicization is to favor a talent for analysis and problem solving over imagination, to replace enthusiasm with dry, sardonic knowingness. Knowingness, he says, is a state of soul which prevents shudders of awe. It makes one immune to romantic enthusiasm. This is where the heresy kicks in. But it seems to me we have to take that warning quite seriously about how you engage that kind of enthusiasm and the possibility of the love of cinema. And Rorty elsewhere talks about criticism coming from a culture of resentment. You know, a lot of criticism is about expressing a kind of resentment, and that was very much the case with the Scotch Reels analysis. There was a sense that we resented. There was that kind of resentment, and you know, while that resentment was absolutely justified and has been, you know, I think has been very productive. I think, in a sense, we have to also think about how we convince. Charlotte Brunson's got a line that I quote over and over again, where she says that our students are more likely to have heard from us why a film is interesting than why we love it, or you know, that notion of it's an interesting film is a way of actually distancing oneself. And I think Rorty's enthusiasm is something to the point. Susan Sontag says, real art has the capacity to make us nervous. By reducing the work of art to its content and then interpreting that, one tames the work of art. Interpretation makes art manageable, conformable. And she says, in place of a hermeneutics, we need an erotics of art. And Giorgio Agamben says, wherever the critic encounters art, he brings it back to its opposite, dissolving it in non-art. Wherever he exercises his reflection, he brings with him non-being and shadow, as though he had no other means to worship art than the celebration of a kind of black mass in honor of the deus inversus, the inverted god of non-art. So it's about content, it's about representation, and it's not about what is it that moves us. What is it that moves us? And I mean, a lot of people find modern colour very boring. I find it really quite moving, and it's how you actually teach about or write about those films to express that sense of being moved by them, as well as the kind of sardonic knowingness. I mean, I think we need, the students need both. They need the analysis, they need the skills of analysis, but they also need to be able to address those questions which the analysis doesn't entirely answer. So my final authoritative source is the Scottish Malt Whisky Society. The Scottish Malt Whisky Society on its website says, whisky barrels being made from natural material cannot be perfectly sealed. Indeed, the ability of the barrels to breathe is vital to the final taste of the product. When a barrel is filled, there is an initial in-drink of about 2%, and then during the years that a barrel spends in the bonded warehouse, about 2% of the contents are lost to evaporation each year. When barrels are opened after, say, 4 years maturing, around 10% of the contents will have disappeared. This loss is known in the trade as the angel's share. And I think it's that angel's share that we have to keep in mind. It is that bit that is lost by the containment of criticism, but in a sense is what makes criticism and engagement with film worth doing in the first place. Okay.